nowhere here. Execute the contingency plan immediately.
The monitors beeped softly in room 412. Afia Boateng lay in a hospital bed with a 6-inch incision across her left side, held together by surgical staples. Her lips were cracked. Her skin was pale. Her body was still recovering from the surgery that had removed her left kidney 48 hours earlier. The kidney was now inside her husband. She had given it to save his life. And Tobias Ajay was standing at the foot of her bed, in a hospital gown, holding a manila envelope. His mother Gertrude stood beside him, smiling. "What is this?" Afia whispered. Tobias set the envelope on the blanket near her feet. "Divorce papers," he said. "My attorney filed this morning." Afia stared at the envelope, then at her husband, then at the woman standing beside him, grinning like she had just won a prize. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just lay there with one kidney missing and her entire world collapsing, and whispered 3 words. "I saved you." Tobias didn't blink. "And I'm grateful. But grateful isn't love." He turned and walked out of the room. Gertrude followed. At the door, she paused and looked back at Afia with an expression that would haunt her for months. "You should have stayed in your lane, dear." The door closed, and Afia Boateng lay in that hospital bed with a hole in her side and a hole in her life, and wondered how saving a man's life had become the thing that ended hers. But it hadn't ended anything. It had just started something that Tobias and Gertrude and everyone standing behind them would never see coming. Because Afia Boateng's father was sitting in the hospital parking lot right now, in a dented yellow taxi, wearing a worn dashiki, reading a newspaper through scratched glasses. And that quiet old man, in that old taxi, was worth $800 million. Afia Boateng grew up believing kindness was the only currency that mattered. Her mother Naana had taught her that. Every night before bed in their small apartment in Houston's 3rd Ward, Naana would hold Afia's hands and say the same thing. "The world will try to make you hard. Stay soft. Softness is not weakness. Softness is what God uses to change the world." Naana died when Afia was 14. Breast cancer. It came fast, and it was merciless. Afia sat beside her mother's bed in that same hospital, Houston Methodist, and watched her fade over 6 weeks. That experience did 2 things to Afia. It made her want to become a nurse, and it made her believe that love meant giving everything without keeping score. Her father Kwame had raised her alone after that. He drove a taxi 7 days a week. He picked Afia up from school every afternoon in that dented yellow Crown Victoria. He attended every parent-teacher conference in his worn dashiki and his scratched glasses. He spoke with a thick Ghanaian accent that made some teachers repeat themselves slowly, as if he couldn't understand English. He understood everything. What no one in Houston knew, not the teachers, not the neighbors, not even Afia until she was 21, was that Kwame Boateng was one of the wealthiest men in West Africa. He had founded Boateng Mineral Holdings in Kumasi in 1989. By 2005, it had grown into one of the largest gold and bauxite mining operations on the continent. The company employed over 4,000 people. Its annual revenue exceeded $300 million. Kwame's personal net worth sat at approximately $800 million. But in the year 2000, when Nana was diagnosed, Kwame made a decision. He sold operational control of the company to a trusted board of directors. He kept his shares. He kept his chairman title. But he moved his wife and daughter to Houston and swore he would give Afia the one thing money could never buy: a normal life. No bodyguards, no mansions, no private schools, no entourage. Just a father and his daughter in a small apartment, taking the bus, eating jollof rice at the kitchen table, watching movies on a second-hand television. When Nana died, Kwame almost took Afia back to Ghana, but he remembered what his wife had said in her final days. Let her grow up here. Let her become American. Let her earn her own way. She doesn't need your money, Kwame. She needs your presence. So Kwame stayed. He kept driving the taxi, not because he needed to, because it kept him close to the streets, close to real people, close to the life Nana wanted for their daughter. Afia went to Howard University on an academic scholarship. She graduated top of her nursing class. She came back to Houston and got hired at the same hospital where her mother had died. She never asked her father for money. She never questioned why he drove a taxi. She never wondered about the phone calls he took in Twy late at night that lasted for hours. She assumed he was talking to relatives back home. He was talking to his board of directors. Kwame watched his daughter build her life brick by brick, and he was proud, prouder than any amount of money had ever made him. Then Tobias Ajay appeared, and Kwame's pride turned to worry. Tobias Ajay was the kind of man who looked perfect from a distance, 6'1", light brown skin, sharp jawline, a smile that made women forget what they were saying mid-sentence. He wore tailored suits and drove a black Mercedes and worked as a senior analyst at one of Houston's biggest investment banks. Afia met him at a friend's birthday dinner in River Oaks. He was charming, attentive. He pulled out her chair. He asked about her work. He listened, really listened, when she described her 12-hour shifts in the ICU. "You save lives for a living," he said with admiration in his voice. "That's the most important job in the world." Afia blushed. She wasn't used to men who respected her work. They dated for 8 months. Tobias was consistent. Flowers every Friday. Phone calls every night. He met Kwame twice, once at Kwame's apartment and once at a restaurant. Both times Tobias looked around Kwame's modest apartment and his modest clothes and his modest car and made a calculation. Poor. Immigrant. Irrelevant. He was polite to Kwame's face, but on the drive home he told Afia something that should have been a red flag. "Your father seems like a good man. Simple. But good." Afia heard good. She missed simple. Kwame heard everything, not because Afia told him, but because Kwame had spent 30 years reading men across boardroom tables in Kumasi and Accra and London and Johannesburg. He could read a man's intentions from across a room. And Kwame read Tobias Ajay like a one-page document. "Be careful with this one," Kwame told Afia over dinner one night. "He smiles too much, and his eyes don't match his mouth." "Daddy, you say that about everyone." "I say it about the ones who deserve it." Afia married Tobias anyway. Small ceremony. Simple reception. Kwame attended in his best dashiki. Gertrude, Tobias's mother, attended in a designer dress that cost more than Kwame's taxi. Gertrude had opposed the marriage from the start, not because Afia wasn't good enough, but because Afia wasn't rich enough. "You could have married Yolanda Price," Gertrude told Tobias the week before the wedding. "Her father owns 3 car dealerships. Her family has money. This nurse girl brings nothing to this family." "Mama, I love Afia." "Love doesn't pay mortgages, Tobias." But Tobias married Afia, and for a while it seemed like he actually meant his vows. The first 2 years were good. Not perfect, but good. They moved into a townhouse in River Oaks that Tobias financed with his banking salary. Afia continued working at Houston Methodist. She worked overtime whenever she could. She put every extra dollar toward their mortgage. She cooked every night. She kept the house spotless. She attended every family event on Tobias's side, even though Gertrude treated her like hired help. At the Ajay family Thanksgiving, Gertrude seated Afia at the far end of the table, away from the main conversation. When Afia brought her homemade jollof rice, Gertrude tasted it, set down her fork, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, It's a bit bland, dear, but I'm sure it's fine for where you come from. Afia smiled and said nothing. Tobias said nothing either. That was the problem. Tobias never said anything when his mother disrespected his wife. He never corrected Gertrude, never defended Afia, never once stood between his mother's cruelty and his wife's dignity. Because deep down, Tobias agreed with his mother. He had married Afia because she was beautiful and kind and made him feel important. But as the years passed, he started seeing her the way Gertrude did. A nurse, a simple girl from a simple family, a woman who would never elevate his status. And then Yolanda Price came back into his life. Yolanda had been Tobias's college girlfriend at Texas, and M. She was everything Afia wasn't. Loud, flashy, connected. Her father owned 3 luxury car dealerships in Houston. She wore Chanel to brunch. She posted photos from Dubai and Milan. She lived the life Tobias wanted to be associated with. They reconnected at an alumni event. Yolanda made it clear she was available. Tobias made it clear he was interested. Within 3 months, they were sleeping together. Within 6 months, Gertrude knew about it. She didn't scold her son. She encouraged him. Yolanda is the woman you should have married. It's not too late to fix your mistake. The plan was forming. Gertrude and Tobias began discussing divorce, quietly, strategically. They would wait for the right moment. Then Tobias got sick, and the right moment arrived faster than anyone expected. If you believe that what you give always comes back to you, subscribe and hit that bell. Because what Afia gave is about to come back in ways no one in this story could have predicted. It started with fatigue, then swelling in his legs, then blood in his urine. Tobias was diagnosed with rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis. Both kidneys were failing. He needed dialysis immediately and a transplant within 6 months, or he would die. The news broke Tobias, not emotionally, selfishly. He wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of losing his lifestyle. Dialysis 3 times a week meant missing work. Missing work meant losing his position at the bank. Losing his position meant losing the image he had built. He needed a kidney. Fast. Gertrude was not a match. Yolanda refused to even get tested. She was terrified of surgery and scars. "I'll be here for you emotionally, baby," she told Tobias over the phone. "But I can't do something like that to my body." Tobias's siblings were not matches. His cousins were not matches. The transplant waiting list was 18 months long. Then the transplant coordinator gave him the news. "Your wife is a perfect match." Afia didn't hesitate, not for 1 second. The moment she heard she was a match, she signed the consent forms. She researched the procedure. She arranged 6 weeks off work. She told her supervisor she would be recovering from a kidney donation for her husband. Her supervisor, a veteran nurse named Margaret, looked at her with concern. "Afia, are you sure about this? Living donor surgery is serious. There are risks." "He's my husband, Margaret. If I can save him, I will." "Does he treat you the way a man should treat a woman who's about to give him an organ?" Afia paused. Then she smiled softly. "He's my husband." Margaret didn't push further, but she made a note in her mind. Something about the way Afia said it, twice, like she was convincing herself, didn't sit right. Kwame drove to the hospital when Afia told him. He sat in the waiting room in his taxi driver clothes, with his scratched glasses and his worn hands folded on his knees. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I know, Daddy. He doesn't deserve it. Maybe not. But I'm not giving my kidney to the man he is. I'm giving it to the man I married." Kwame looked at his daughter. His eyes were wet. "Your mother would be proud of you, and angry at me for not stopping you." Afia laughed. It was the last time she would laugh for a long time. The surgery was performed on a Tuesday morning. Both procedures were successful. Tobias received the kidney, and his body accepted it without complication. Afia was not as lucky. She developed a post-operative infection that sent her temperature to 104 degrees. She was placed on IV antibiotics for 72 hours. Her incision site became inflamed. She lost 11 pounds in 1 week. Her body, already thin from the stress of the marriage, struggled to recover. For 3 days, she was in critical observation. Kwame sat beside her bed for every single hour. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep in a bed. He slept in the plastic chair beside her. He held her hand when she cried from the pain. Tobias visited once, for 15 minutes. He stood at the door and asked how she was feeling, and then told her he needed to get back to his own recovery. He didn't hold her hand. He didn't say thank you. He walked away from the woman who had nearly died, giving him a piece of her body, and went back to his private room, where Yolanda was waiting with flowers and a new robe. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday morning, 48 hours after Afia's condition had stabilized. She was still in bed, still attached to an IV, still unable to walk to the bathroom without help. Tobias walked in, wearing a hospital gown and slippers. He was recovering well. His color was good. The kidney, Afia's kidney, was functioning perfectly. Behind him stood Gertrude, dressed in a cream-colored pantsuit, gold jewelry, full makeup. She looked like she was attending a business meeting, not visiting a woman who had just saved her son's life. Tobias set the manila envelope on the blanket near Afia's feet. "What is this?" Afia whispered. "Divorce papers. My attorney filed this morning." Afia stared at the envelope. Her brain couldn't process it. She was still on pain medication. Her body was still fighting infection. Her left side felt like it was on fire. "I don't understand." Gertrude stepped forward. Her voice was calm and rehearsed. "Tobias has decided to move on, Afia. The marriage hasn't been working for some time. It's best for both of you. I gave him my kidney 2 days ago. I almost died." Tobias shifted his weight. For a brief moment, less than a second, something flickered across his face. Guilt. Maybe shame. But it disappeared as fast as it came. "And I'm grateful. But grateful isn't love. I haven't been happy for a long time, Afia. I've been thinking about this for months." "Months? Or you've been planning this for months while I was being tested to save your life?" Silence. Gertrude filled it. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, dear. Tobias has already moved Yolanda into the house. It's time for you to think about your next steps." Afia's heart monitor spiked. A nurse came in and checked the screen. She looked at Tobias and Gertrude, and then at Afia's face. Ashen, trembling, tears streaming, and her own expression hardened. "She needs rest. You need to leave." Tobias walked out without looking back. Gertrude paused at the door. She looked at Afia with an expression of cold satisfaction, the look of a woman who had gotten exactly what she wanted. "You should have stayed in your lane, dear." The door closed. Afia lay there, 1 kidney, no home, no husband, and a set of divorce papers sitting on her legs like a death certificate for everything she had believed about love. Kwame was in the cafeteria getting tea when it happened. When he returned and saw his daughter's face, the tears, the trembling, the envelope, he set the tea down slowly. "What happened?" Afia couldn't speak. She just pointed at the envelope. Kwame picked it up. He opened it. He read the first page. His face didn't change. Not one muscle. He read the entire document, all 14 pages, standing perfectly still beside his daughter's bed. When he finished, he placed the papers back in the envelope and set it on the nightstand. Then he sat down in the plastic chair. He took Afia's hand. "Rest now," he said softly. "Daddy is going to take care of everything." Afia closed her eyes, and for the first time in 30 years, Kwame Boateng picked up his phone and called a number in Accra. "It's Kwame. I need the Houston accounts activated. All of them. And I need Raymond on a plane tonight." He hung up. He looked at his daughter sleeping. And the quiet taxi driver disappeared. The chairman of Boateng Mineral Holdings had just woken up. 3 things began happening simultaneously, and none of them were accidents. The first thing started with Serena Okafor. Tobias had hired the law firm of Whitfield and Associates to handle his divorce. He wanted it fast and clean. He wanted the house. He wanted his investment accounts untouched. He wanted Afia to walk away with nothing, arguing that her nursing salary was sufficient and that the marriage had been short enough to avoid significant asset division. What Tobias didn't know was that Serena Okafor, one of the junior partners at Whitfield and Associates, had been Afia's college roommate at Howard University. They had shared a dorm room for 3 years. They had studied together, cried together during finals, celebrated together at graduation. The moment Serena saw the intake file cross her desk, Afia Boateng versus Tobias Adjei, she felt her stomach drop. She picked up the phone. "Afia, it's Serena. We need to talk." "Serena, I haven't heard from you and your husband just hired my firm to divorce you. I can't represent him. Conflict of interest. But I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do not sign anything. Do not respond to anything. Do not leave that hospital until you have your own attorney. Do you understand me?" Afia was silent. "Afia, do you understand?" "Yes." "Good. I'm going to recommend someone. The best family law attorney in Houston. Her name is Claudia Ferreira. She doesn't lose. Ever. I'm calling her right now." Serena hung up and immediately filed a conflict of interest disclosure with her firm. She could no longer be involved in the case, but she had done something far more important. She had armed her friend. The second thing started with Dr. Helen Asare. Dr. Asare was the hospital administrator at Houston Methodist, a meticulous woman who reviewed billing reports weekly with forensic precision. 3 days after Afia's surgery, she noticed an irregularity. A charge had been submitted to Tobias Adjei's hospital account for a private recovery suite upgrade, a $14,000 charge. The authorization signature on the form belonged to Gertrude Adjei, listed as the patient's mother and emergency contact. But the upgrade wasn't for Tobias. It was for Yolanda Price. Gertrude had used Tobias's hospital account to book a private suite for Yolanda, complete with catered meals, a private nurse, and daily flower deliveries, so Yolanda could stay comfortably in the hospital and visit Tobias without being seen by Afia on the recovery floor. The charge was billed to Tobias's insurance, which meant it was billed to the insurance plan that covered both Tobias and Afia, because they were still legally married. Dr. Asare flagged it immediately. Hospital billing fraud was a criminal matter. She opened an internal investigation and requested all authorization forms signed by Gertrude Adjei during her son's stay. What she found was worse than one fraudulent charge. Gertrude had signed for over $47,000 in unauthorized charges, private suites, catering, transportation, and a consultation with a cosmetic surgeon that had nothing to do with Tobias's transplant, all billed to the joint insurance account. Dr. Asare picked up her phone and called the hospital's legal counsel. "We have a problem." The third thing started with Kwame Boateng. The night after the divorce papers were served, Kwame drove his taxi to George Bush Intercontinental Airport. He parked in the arrivals lane and waited. At 11:45 p.m. a man walked out of the international terminal. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's cars. He carried a single leather briefcase. His name was Raymond Mensa Thompson, and he was the chief legal counsel for Boateng Mineral Holdings and one of the most powerful corporate attorneys in West Africa. He had represented mining interests before international courts. He had negotiated deals with sovereign governments. He had made billionaires cry. He got into the front seat of Kwame's taxi. "Kwame, it's been too long." "It has. Tell me everything." Kwame drove through the Houston night and told Raymond everything. The marriage, the cruelty, the kidney, the divorce papers served while his daughter was still bleeding from saving her husband's life. Raymond listened without interrupting. When Kwame finished, Raymond was quiet for a long time. "What do you want, Kwame?" "I want my daughter protected. I want her house. I want her dignity. And I want that boy and his mother to understand exactly who they tried to discard." "You want to reveal yourself?" Kwame gripped the steering wheel. "I didn't want to. Naana made me promise to let Afia live a normal life. But Naana also said to protect our daughter no matter what. They attacked her while she was lying in a hospital bed with one kidney. They crossed the line." Raymond nodded. "Then we cross it back. My way." The next 2 weeks moved with the precision of a military operation. Claudia Ferreira, the attorney Serena recommended, took Afia's case immediately. When she reviewed the divorce filing, she nearly laughed. "Your husband is asking for the house, all investment accounts, and minimal alimony. He's arguing the marriage was too short for equitable distribution." She looked at Afia. "You donated a kidney to this man?" "Yes." "While you were married to him?" "Yes." "And he filed for divorce while you were still recovering from the surgery?" "Yes." Claudia set down the papers. "I'm going to enjoy this case." Claudia filed a countersuit that made Tobias's attorney choke on his coffee. She argued that Afia's kidney donation constituted extraordinary marital sacrifice, a legal concept that carried significant weight in Texas family courts. She further argued that Tobias had engaged in premeditated marital fraud, planning the divorce while simultaneously accepting a life-saving organ from his spouse. She requested the house, both investment accounts, 5 years of alimony, and a restraining order against Gertrude Ajay for emotional abuse and harassment during a medical recovery. Tobias called his attorney in a panic. "She can't do that. It was a gift. The kidney was a gift." His attorney was quiet. "Tobias, she gave you an organ while you were planning to leave her. A judge is going to see that. A jury is going to see that. And they are not going to see it the way you want them to." Meanwhile, Dr. Asare's investigation had escalated. The hospital's legal team had compiled a complete file on Gertrude's unauthorized charges. $47,000 in fraudulent billing, insurance fraud, falsified authorization forms. The file was referred to the Harris County District Attorney's Office. Gertrude Ajay received a phone call from a prosecutor on a Tuesday afternoon. "Mrs. Ajay, this is the Harris County DA's office. We need you to come in for a meeting regarding billing irregularities at Houston Methodist Hospital." Gertrude's hand trembled for the first time in her life, and Raymond Mensa Thompson had been busy too. Quietly, precisely, in ways that left no fingerprints. He had contacted the board of directors of the investment bank where Tobias worked. He didn't threaten. He didn't demand. He simply made a phone call as the chief counsel of a company with $800 million in assets and mentioned, casually, that he was exploring investment banking partnerships in Houston and wanted to understand the ethical standards of potential partner firms. "We understand one of your senior analysts is currently involved in a rather public divorce case involving organ donation fraud," Raymond mentioned. "So we would want to ensure any partner firm maintains the highest ethical standards." The bank launched an internal review of Tobias Ajay within 24 hours. The walls were closing in from every direction, and Tobias and Gertrude had no idea who was orchestrating it. The moment came on a Wednesday afternoon, 3 weeks after the divorce papers were served. Tobias had been discharged from the hospital. He was living in the River Oaks townhouse with Yolanda. He was back at work, though his supervisor had started giving him strange looks. He assumed the divorce was proceeding smoothly. Then Claudia Ferreira called for a settlement meeting. Tobias arrived at the downtown Houston conference room with his attorney. He expected Afia to show up looking broken, defeated, ready to sign whatever they put in front of her. See, Afia walked in first. She had lost weight. She moved slowly. The incision was still healing, but her eyes were clear. She wore a simple navy blue dress and small gold earrings. She looked calm. Behind her walked Claudia Ferreira, tailored black suit, leather briefcase, a face that said, "I've already won this." Behind Claudia walked a man Tobias didn't recognize. Tall, silver-haired, charcoal suit that looked like it cost more than the conference room. He carried a leather briefcase and sat down without introducing himself. And behind the silver-haired man walked Kwame Boateng. Tobias almost didn't register him, just the taxi driver. Afia's father, the poor old man in the dashiki. But Kwame wasn't wearing a dashiki today. He was wearing a hand-tailored three-piece suit in dark charcoal, Italian leather shoes, a gold watch that caught the overhead light. His scratched glasses had been replaced with titanium frames. His posture was different. His presence was different. Everything about him was different. Tobias blinked. "Mr. Boateng, I didn't expect you to be here." Kwame didn't respond. He sat down, folded his hands on the table, and looked at Tobias with an expression that made the temperature in the room drop. Raymond spoke first. "My name is Raymond Mensah Thompson. I am Chief Legal Counsel for Boateng Mineral Holdings. I represent Mr. Kwame Boateng, Chairman and Founder." Tobias's attorney frowned. "Boateng Mineral Holdings? I'm not familiar." Raymond opened his briefcase and slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It was a Bloomberg profile. Boateng Mineral Holdings, headquarters in Kumasi, Ghana. Annual revenue, $312 million. Total assessed value, $847 million. Chairman, Kwame Boateng. Tobias picked up the paper. He read it. He read it again. His face went white. He looked at Kwame, the taxi driver, the poor immigrant, the simple man whose apartment smelled like old books and palm oil. $847 million. That's not possible. Kwame spoke for the first time. His voice was low, calm. The thick Ghanaian accent that Tobias had privately mocked for years now carried the weight of an empire behind it. "You looked at me and saw a taxi driver. You looked at my daughter and saw a poor nurse. You took her kidney while you were planning to throw her away. And you brought your mother to smile at her while she was bleeding in a hospital bed." Kwame leaned forward. "I've been patient for 30 years. I watched you. I watched your mother. I waited because my wife made me promise to let Afia live a normal life. But you broke something that patience cannot fix." He pointed at the Bloomberg sheet. "That is who I am. And this is what is about to happen." Raymond took over. His voice was clinical, precise, a surgeon of a different kind. Item 1. Mrs. Gertrude Ajay is currently under investigation by the Harris County District Attorney's Office for $47,000 in insurance fraud committed at Houston Methodist Hospital. She will be formally charged within the week. Tobias's attorney dropped his pen. Item 2. Your employer has initiated an internal ethics review based on the circumstances of this divorce. We understand your position is already under scrutiny. Tobias gripped the edge of the table. Item 3. Ms. Ferreira's countersuit requests the marital home, all joint investment accounts, and 5 years of alimony based on extraordinary marital sacrifice, specifically the donation of a kidney under fraudulent pretenses. Texas case law strongly supports this claim. We have 6 precedents prepared. Item 4. Mr. Boateng has established a trust fund for his daughter, valued at $12 million. She will never need anything from you again. But this is not about money. This is about accountability. Raymond paused. He looked at Tobias. You have two options. Option 1. You agree to the settlement terms today. You sign over the house. You transfer the investment accounts. You accept the alimony terms. And this ends quietly. Option 2. You fight it. And we go to trial. And every media outlet in Houston covers the story of the man who took his wife's kidney and served her divorce papers while she was still connected to an IV. And your mother's fraud charges become public. And your employer completes their review with full knowledge of the circumstances. Raymond closed his briefcase. We are not in a hurry. Take your time. The room was silent for 45 seconds. Tobias looked at his attorney. His attorney was staring at the Bloomberg sheet. He slowly shook his head. Tobias, sign the settlement. Tobias looked at Afia. She was sitting quietly, hands folded. No anger on her face, no satisfaction, no revenge. Just the calm of a woman who had given everything and was finally being protected by the one person who had never stopped watching over her. Tobias's eyes moved to Kwame, the taxi driver, the billionaire, the father. And Tobias Adjai, for the first time in his adult life, broke down. Not because he lost the house, not because he lost the money, but because he realized in that moment exactly what he had thrown away. Not just Afia, not just the kidney, but the kind of love that most men spend their entire lives looking for and never find. He had held it in his hands, and he had crushed it. For Yolanda, for Gertrude, for status, for nothing. He signed the papers, every page, every line, and he didn't say a word. 6 months later, Afia Boateng stood in the kitchen of her townhouse in River Oaks making breakfast. Her townhouse now. On her kitchen. Her life. The morning sun came through the windows warm and golden. She cracked eggs into a pan and listened to the radio playing soft gospel music. Her body had healed. The scar on her left side had faded to a thin silver line. She was back at work. Her patients at Houston Methodist loved her. Her supervisor, Margaret, had nominated her for the hospital's Nurse of the Year award. Kwame came by every Sunday for dinner. He still drove the taxi. He still wore the dashiki. He still lived in the small apartment in 3rd Ward. Daddy, you have $12 million in a trust with my name on it. You have $800 million in a mining company. Why do you still drive that taxi? Kwame smiled. He was eating her jollof rice, the recipe Nana had taught her. Because your mother fell in love with a taxi driver, and I promised her I would never become someone she wouldn't recognize. Afia's eyes filled with tears. I miss her, Daddy. She's here, every time you help a patient, every time you show kindness to someone who doesn't deserve it, every time you choose softness over hardness. That's Nana, living through you. He took another bite of rice. This is better than your mother's. Don't tell her I said that. Afia laughed, a real laugh, the kind that comes from a place that has healed. Gertrude Ajay was charged with insurance fraud by the Harris County DA. She pleaded no contest and received 18 months of probation, a $35,000 fine, and 200 hours of community service. Her name appeared in the Houston Chronicle. 3 of her society friends stopped returning her calls. Tobias lost his position at the investment bank. The ethics review concluded that his conduct during the marriage, specifically accepting a life-saving organ while planning a divorce, demonstrated a pattern of deception inconsistent with the firm's values. He was given a severance package and escorted from the building on a Friday afternoon. Yolanda left him 4 days later. She had signed up for a wealthy banker with a River Oaks lifestyle. Not an unemployed man living in a rented apartment in Katy. She took her designer bags and her Instagram followers and disappeared back to her father's house. Tobias tried to call Afia once, 3 months after the settlement. Her number had been changed. He tried to visit Kwame at the taxi stand. Kwame wasn't there. A younger driver told him Kwame had gone to Ghana for business. He didn't know when he would be back. Tobias stood on the sidewalk outside the taxi stand. The Houston sun was hot. His suit didn't fit right anymore. He had gained weight. His phone was quiet. No Yolanda. No Gertrude calling with schemes. No colleagues. No status. No wife. No kidney of his own. Just the consequences of treating a gift like garbage. Somewhere across town, Afia Boateng walked into room 412 at Houston Methodist, the same room where she had received divorce papers. A new patient was lying in the bed, a young woman recovering from surgery, scared and alone. Afia pulled up a chair. She sat down. She took the woman's hand. "You're going to be okay. I'm going to take care of you." The young woman looked at her with grateful eyes. "Thank you." Afia smiled, the kind of smile her mother used to give, the kind that doesn't perform, the kind that just gives. Because Nana was right. Softness isn't weakness. Softness is what changes the world. And fate doesn't forget the ones who give with their whole heart. It just takes its time making sure the givers are placed exactly where they deserve to be. Tobias tried to take everything from a woman who had given him everything, and fate responded with a lesson that no amount of money, no amount of status, and no amount of Gertrude's scheming could undo. You cannot discard the people who save you and expect the world to look the other way. The world saw, and the world responded. Kofi could have walked away quietly, but some lessons need an audience. If you believe fate always keeps the score, subscribe. Because in these stories, the proud always fall, and the humble always rise. Fate and Folktales. We'll see you in the next one.